Welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast, the resource for transitional and experienced genealogists who want to create a successful business. I'm your host, Marianne Pierre-Louis. Here you'll learn from professionals all around the world who work in the field of genealogy. Are you ready to get started? Then let's get going. Welcome to episode 53 of the Genealogy Professional Podcast. Today we head to Tennessee to chat with genealogist and archivist Melissa Barker. Melissa, welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Marianne. So glad to be here.
I noticed you do both genealogy and archives management. So I want to start with genealogy. You've been researching your personal family history for 30 years. At what point did you say, I want to become a professional genealogist?
I became a professional genealogist in 2004. I was working with my husband, who was self-employed, and I was really loving genealogy. And I asked my husband, I said, I would like to make a little extra income. And he said, find something that you love to do and figure out how to make an income. And I thought, I love genealogy. I wonder if I could turn this into a profession. And so that's what started me on the road to becoming a professional genealogist. And I was in the first ProGen study group, and from there it just took off.
So you were in ProGen 1?
Yes.
The very, very first one. And you took the ProGen course, which is 18 months. It's a huge commitment. And you finished that. You're feeling pretty confident about yourself after that? What happens after ProGen?
Well, I had already been researching genealogy since 1990, so 14 years by then. And my expertise is in Tennessee research, and so I have just been researching all through Middle Tennessee. I don't live very far from the Tennessee State Library and Archives, which is my home away from home. And so I just decided to hang my shingle out because of my experience. And even after I did that, we all continue to learn. And so I've been able to hone my skills as a genealogist, but also as a professional genealogist. I actually started out not necessarily taking clients per se, but what I would do is I would do obituary lookups for $1 a piece.
And so how did you do that? Like, how did people know to contact you for that? Where did you advertise that you would do that?
I didn't necessarily advertise. I kind of made it known on a lot of message boards that I could get to the Tennessee State Library and Archives and look for obituaries because they have the microfilms from all of the newspapers across the state of Tennessee. And people would just start asking me, and then they would tell their genealogy friends about it. And when that started, I just started getting email after email. And so that's kind of how I started.
So this is really interesting because you started a couple years before me, and you were really on the cusp of the old and the new because, like you mentioned, the listservs and stuff, and that was so much a big part of the genealogy community at that time. And so you've really witnessed a huge transformation in genealogy from when you originally started out. Even education when you started out was not online at all.
Absolutely not. I'm a huge advocate of self-educating. And so once I did the ProGen class, which was fantastic, then I was looking for more. I was really hungry for more education. And it was a little difficult to find, especially since I was not able to travel to institutes or to other things like that. So finding it online was kind of difficult. But today, if someone is out there and whether they want to be a professional or not, the education and the learning that you can get online is wonderful.
How long did you continue doing professional genealogy like this? Did you take clients? What services were you offering at this stage?
Yes, I was taking clients. I would do hourly research. I would do simple lookups all the way up to full-blown research projects. And I started that in 2004. And actually, I don't take as many clients today. I rarely take clients, but I took clients up until about 2015 to 17, somewhere right in there.
Yeah, well, you're much busier these days, and we'll get to that. Did you start to do any public speaking or writing during this initial phase of your genealogy career, or did that come later?
That came later. People who personally know me today look at me and they say they cannot believe that I'm actually speaking in public. Because growing up and even as a young adult, I was extremely shy and backwards. I tell a story, and my husband never lets me forget the story, that when I was younger, I would be playing outside. And if a car would come by, I would hide behind a tree because I didn't want anybody to see me.
Wow.
And so I was very, very shy. And so even my father, who recently passed, was always amazed when he heard that I was speaking somewhere because he just could never imagine that I would do such a thing.
That's incredible. That is quite a turnaround. Do you know how you made that transition?
I honestly believe it was because of my love of my profession, and the desire to teach and to educate others about genealogy and about archives.
Let's talk a little bit about the archives now, because you're an archivist. How did that aspect come into your career?
That was a true accident, something I wasn't even looking for. It wasn't even on my horizon. In 2010, I was doing wonderful. I've been a professional genealogist for 6 years. Things were going great. I was very happy where I was in my life. And then I get a phone call from our local librarian. She was telling me that there were some local historical people in our local historical society that had gotten permission to clean out and organize the records vault that is in the basement of the courthouse, and wanted to know if I'd like to be a part of that because she knew I did genealogy because I was always at the library. And my initial thoughts were, I have enough on my plate. I don't think I need something else. And I almost said no. And I said, well, I'll do it. It's for one day. I'll go do that. And this was in August of 2010. We showed up for that day, started cleaning out the vault, spent half of the day to do that. Went to lunch, and everyone around the table said, we really need to have an archive because our records are falling apart and they're deteriorating. We need to do something about it. And then someone said, well, we need someone to head this up to lead this. Everybody sat on their hands, did not want to volunteer. And they all looked at me and they said, Melissa, you're the genealogist. Why don't you do it? And I said, but I'm not an archivist. Why would I do this? I said, okay, well, I'll look into it. And I found out that the Tennessee State Library and Archives has what they called an Archives Institute. They offer this as a 3-year program, and they offer it to all of their potential and working archivists, county archivists. And so I took that 3-year course. I went back to school at age 42, and I became my county archivist.
So tell us a little bit more about this course. Is this a part-time course? Is this something that's done in the evenings? How often do they meet? Did you have to pay for it?
Yes, it was. I had to pay for it actually because we established an archive. They actually gave us a budget, a small budget, and so I was able to pay for the schooling through that. But the course is a 3-year course. You come together once a year, and then twice a year, and then 3 times a year. What we do is you meet at the Tennessee State Library and Archives, and the archivists there are teaching you how to be an archivist. And then you have tons of other archivists from across the state who are coming, or they're volunteers that work in archives or museums. And this 3-year course is sanctioned by the Tennessee State Library and Archives. It's wonderful offering of education so that we can get archivists into our county archives to start getting busy and taking care of the records.
Wow, it sounds wonderful that they have that program set up that you can take advantage of that.
It is. It's wonderful. I can't say enough about the course. In fact, many of us, once we're finished, we want to go back and do continuing education and say, hey, you need to have some more courses because we just want to go back. It is. It's a wonderful thing that they offer to all of their archivists. When I became an archivist in 2013, when I finally got through the course, there were, out of the 95 counties in Tennessee, there were still 23 that did not have an archives. And today, I think now there's 3 left.
Wow.
Because Tennessee has been at the forefront of making sure every county has a county archives.
All right, so you take this course, you become an archivist. Now you have this brand new archives to organize. What do you do?
Well, that's what I asked myself. I said, why am I doing this? Because our records, we were a county that was formed in 1871. Our records had never been organized, had never been archived, never been nothing. In fact, cleaning out the vault, we found things in there that shouldn't have been in there. We found boxes torn open and records on the floor. So I just started with the very first box, and we started going through and using what are called retention schedules that are set up by your state government that tell you what records are permanent, what records are temporary, meaning they only have a shelf life of so many years and then you can get rid of them, which sounds crazy to some genealogists, but we can't keep everything. And so, going by that manual and seeing what we had, we were able to organize and get these records in such a state that then we could start processing records into manuscript collections or vertical files and things like that.
I imagine you're physically organizing everything so that you know what you have and you can tell people what you have so they can access it. But how are you keeping track of it electronically, either for yourself or to make available sort of in a electronic card catalog? Because the physical aspect is one thing, but then the whole digital aspect is another thing.
Yes. While we process records, like if you're going to process a manuscript collection, you're going to produce what's called a finding aid. And the finding aid is a document that the archivist produces as they are processing the collection. This includes all kinds of information about the collection, but most importantly, it includes what's called a contents list, which tells you a box by box, folder by folder, what's in the collection. And these finding aids are usually available at the archives, either in paper form or on an in-house computer. Many of our archives now, and I mean, this is only coming about in the last probably 5 years, that they're starting to get their finding aids online. We are not quite at that point. We hope to be at that point in the next year because we've gotten some digitization equipment through a grant that we just received this last year. So we're going to start digitizing some of our books, loose papers, and things like that. But many of our archives have these finding aids. They have indexes and even a few digitized records that you can get at the archives. Now, like I said, many of our archives are really stepping up, and places like Archive Grid, Internet Archive, those are places where archives are putting the materials online and making them available to researchers.
So what stage are you at in your particular county archive in terms of either having an online card catalog or connecting in with one of these online sites?
We are probably 1 to 2 years out from that. We still have, we've processed a lot of our records. We are now getting, like I said, the digitization equipment, scanners, and things like that. So we can start getting our finding aids online. And we're probably going to go use Internet Archive. That's what a lot of archivists use because it's also a free database that can be used by archivists. It's coming a long process. I mean, we've been in archive now for almost 10 years, and so it's taken us that long just to get through the records that we have. And you also have to remember, we're dealing with the records that we found in the state that they were in when we started. Mm-hmm. But every year, county governments also transfer records from their offices to the archive, which we have to deal with.
You have sort of a special situation because you're part of government. Mm-hmm. You have considerations that other, independent genealogists and such don't have. So you have to kind of think out this component with everything that you do. So, for instance, when you have a website, when you start to, at least listing your hours and maybe you want to put up some guidance documents or whatever, would your website be part of a county website or would you have an independent website?
Depending, it can be either or. Some of our county archives are in conjunction with their county websites, but many of us have independent websites. And like I said, we can even go through Internet Archive or Archive Grid. So no, mine's going to probably be independent.
So you don't have anything right now? Like there must be something online that at least tells people the hours and the phone number for your archive?
We actually have a Facebook page, which many of our archives now are using social media to a great extent. So we have a Facebook page. We do have kind of a skeleton web page, but we are looking now to do more with that and to get more records on.
Huh, so somebody would have to find the information on Facebook in order to find the details currently about your county archive?
Another great place to find us and to find many archives in any state is to go to the state archives websites.
Okay.
Yeah, many people don't realize that all 50 U.S. states have a state archives and they all have a website. Now, finding information sometimes on those websites can be a little challenging. I don't know why they do that, but they do. There is a place on the Tennessee State Library and Archives called Archives Management, and you go there and there is a map of Tennessee and you can click any county and you can get the information about each county's archives hours, what they hold in their collections, contact information, and things like that.
All right. So if somebody goes to Google, they want to go to your particular archive, they will hit it on that page and they can get the information they need to call you.
Yes, that's correct.
And then they give a call and say, hey, my family's from this town, and do you have stuff? And then you would just initiate it that way.
Correct. Yes, they email us, they call us, they come by when they're in town, unless they live here. And we also get Facebook messages from people.
The archive aspect of your career, part-time, is that full-time?
It is full-time. I work Monday through Friday at the archives, 8 till 4:30, and it has become my main profession. Like I said, I don't take clients much anymore. It's funny because the genealogy is still there. It's still a passion because I'm helping genealogists on a daily basis with their research. Yesterday, I had a gentleman contact me from Atlanta, Georgia. He was helping a friend of his with his SAR application, and he needed information from our archives, and I was able to provide that for him.
You also are continuing with the genealogy sort of in a different capacity than before you became a full-time archivist. What does professional genealogy look like for you now, considering your time limitations?
What it looks like for me now is mainly speaking, writing, lecturing, teaching. I do a genealogy class once a month at my local library. It's a free class I do every month. It's something that I do to give back to my genealogy community here locally. I have anywhere between 25 and 30 students every month. I've been doing that now for almost 10 years. And we do it every month except for November and December. It's kind of hard to get people to come out near the holidays. But these students have been with me the whole time, and we have a subject that we tackle every single month. And that's what I love doing, and teaching genealogy to others and teaching it in conjunction with the archives, because I show them when I'm teaching them, I show them records that we have in our archives. I teach them a subject and then I say, here are the records, they do exist. I teach a lot about how not everything is online. As much as I love to do research online and more is coming online, my experience as an archivist, I can tell you that there is so much that is not online and that you really need to be using archives and libraries, museums, and things like that.
How far away is the physical location of your library from the county archives that you work at? Like, can you take the students over to the archives?
Yeah, you can walk out the door, go half a block. You could walk it and go right to the courthouse where the archives is.
And so do you ever take your students over there for that hands-on field trip?
I have done that in the past, and I've actually encouraged them to go to other archives and experience what they have, because every archive is different. They're different in how they operate. They're different in what kind of records that they have. And so I always encourage them to go to the facility.
In a bio that I saw of you online, it talks about you doing virtual webinar presentations across the country. So it sounds like you've made a specific decision that you're going to focus on virtual presentations rather than in-person presentations.
Yes. The reason that I chose to do that mainly was because I work full time as an archivist. And so while I could take vacation time, I tend to take my vacation time with my family. So I offer to do virtual presentations in the evenings and on weekends to get my message out there and to be able to teach others about archives and genealogy.
So, how do you let organizations know that you're available for virtual presentations?
I started that in 2015. I had been an archivist for 5 years, and I thought, I'm so passionate about demystifying the archives in the genealogy world because I found that it was really kind of an interesting concept. When I was a genealogist, I would go to archives, but when I became an archivist and I worked with genealogists, when I'd see them come in the door, I noticed that they were seemingly intimidated a lot of the times by the concept of an archive. So I really wanted to just rip that curtain down and just show them that it is just a wonderful place. And so I do a lot of the call for papers. When they do call for paper, societies and organizations do that for virtual webinars. I will turn those in. I've also emailed local societies such as genealogical societies, historical societies, and offered to give presentations that way.
Who was the very first online presentation that you presented to? What organization?
It was for the I'm trying to think, the Utah Genealogical Association, I believe.
Wow, that's a pretty big one for a first time presentation.
Yes, it
No
was that
pressure.
one. Yeah, no, it was that one, and then the other one that I did was for I can't remember the name of it. It was Dave Robeson, Massachusetts. That was the other one, and that one was very interesting because we couldn't get the webinar platform to work, so I ended up doing it through Skype, and I had never used Skype before. And so then I told Dave when I was ready for my slide because they had my presentation there. I couldn't operate it here. And I would say, okay, next slide. And then on the next slide.
Oh, that's
So it
funny.
was very interesting. Yeah.
The reason I kind of want to probe into this a little bit is because I think a lot of our listeners, when they think about doing speaking, they think about doing in-person public speaking, which I'm sure that you've done some of that in your local area, in addition to your classes. But I don't know that anybody's ever considered, wow, I'm going to become a virtual speaker and focus on that. And that's, in essence, what you've chosen to do because that's what works with your job and everything.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm not able to travel like a lot of people. And so I, again, sat down and I thought, how can I do this? How can I make this work? I've been watching people like yourself, like Thomas McAtee, Pat Ritchie Erickson. A lot of the genealogists were starting to do these virtual webinars. And I was watching a lot of them and learning from them. And I thought, that's something I can do. I can do that from home. I can still teach my passion, and yet I can do it from home where I don't have to do that traveling and I can still do my day job.
Yeah, I think it's a great decision. I really like that you looked at your availability, what you're able to do, and you made it work within, what you wanted and what you could give to it. I think it's great that you made that decision and then you made that happen. Writing, you've done a lot of writing. You've written for the FGS Forum, for Crossroads, for Abundant Genealogy, and your local newspaper. When did the writing start to take place?
The writing started to take place around the same time as the speaking. I have to tell you that in 2015, when I was deciding that I really wanted to get out there and teach, lecture, and write, I reached out to Thomas McAtee. He was doing a lot of mentoring, and I think he still does. And he's been mentoring me for the past 5 years. And I said, what can I do? I said, I can't travel. I'm now working full time as an archivist. What else is out there? Because I honestly didn't know what else was out there for me. And so he was the one who put me on to the virtual speaking and the writing. And I've always been an aspiring writer. I have a gazillion ideas for books in my head, and I haven't written one yet. I'm hoping to do that. But I thought, I'll start out small. I'll start writing articles. I'll start writing for my local newspaper. And for my local newspaper, It's a wonderful twofold thing. I get to write about some genealogy, but mainly I get to share about the history of our county and what we have in our archives, which gets people interested, and they come and see what we have.
Does your local newspaper pay you?
No, they do not. Believe it or not, a lot of newspapers don't pay for things like that.
Oh, yeah, no,
Um, I,
it's exactly why I asked you, because the newspapers never pay.
no, they don't. That and let me tell you something too. People that are looking to be, I'm gonna say, professional writers, like what I'm doing, that doesn't pay a whole lot either. And I found that out. It's one of those myths. You think, oh, writers are grand, and they make lots of money, and they're wonderful. A lot of the articles and things that I do, I don't get paid to do. But like the local newspaper, I asked them. I said, "Will I get paid for this?" And they were like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, we don't pay for stuff like that." But the passion in me wanted to get this information out there, and so like I said, I've been doing it now for about 5 years.
There are a lot of reasons to do things, even if they aren't paid. Probably for you writing this local newspaper column, there are actually multiple reasons that you probably write it. Your love and your passion for the history, and then your desire to share the history, but it also builds your reputation and your credibility within your local region as well. So there's a whole lot of different reasons that you might want to do that even without getting paid.
Absolutely. And from a professional standpoint, there's things that we do that we don't get paid that will lead to paying things. I have found that with me as well. There are things that I have done that I have enjoyed doing just for the enjoyment of it, but it's also led me to things that actually paid. So, to me, it's a win-win.
So for most of these writing opportunities that you have here, are most of these unpaid? Because I imagine Crossroads, I don't know because I've never tried to write for them, but is that a volunteer thing as well for Crossroads?
Crossroads does not. They do pay
Oh,
some.
they do.
Uh,
Okay.
yes, yeah. But I am the reviews editor for FGS Forum, and that is not paid. That is something that actually I fell into. And again, I kind of fell into that. But I am an avid reader, and I review books for them. And a lot of the other stuff that I do is just not paid for writing articles for things.
Do you go through any thought process to decide whether you're going to write for somebody unpaid or whether you need to have paid? Like, do you say, okay, well, I'm going to get these benefits out of that, so I will write for the FGS forum or whatever?
I think I do. Like I say, when I first started, my goal was to get paid for everything that I did. But fortunately, I do have a day job and I get paid for that. And so I'm lucky that I'm able to go after some things and do some things that really I love doing and are a passion. And so my thought process is that, if I write for this, and I said, then whoever's reading that will maybe learn something about genealogy or archives. And then maybe it will lead to something else. And then that will lead to something else. And so that's kind of my thought process. Like I said, mainly it's because I enjoy it, but it's also in hopes that someone will read it and then offer me another writing gig or a speaking something, and professionally, that's kind of what I look for.
Mm-hmm. Let's get back to talking about Thomas McKenty. You called it mentoring, but it's not a traditional mentoring thing where two people just meet at a society and one kind of gives them guidance. Because I'm guessing it's more like a coaching thing.
It is. It is. He calls it mentoring, but I would say probably more like coaching. He kind of showed me what would be available out there. He hooked me up with with a few people, and that was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Because I honestly didn't know what else was out there other than being a professional genealogist. I thought, well, that's it. There's nothing else out there. So he opened my eyes to, there are other avenues to make an income, but also to get your craft out there, what you are doing out there in front of people.
And just to be transparent here, when you're working with Thomas, that's a paid coaching exchange. It's not like a volunteer thing that he's doing for you.
Being transparent, he actually did volunteer for me. Now he does do paid coaching.
Oh, okay.
But he actually volunteered to help me.
Wow, that's very nice of Thomas.
Yeah, and so I have been grateful to him since day one.
Do you know why he chose you and said, I want to do this
Uh,
for you.
I hope just the enjoyment of helping someone because I've never asked him that question. I can tell you that I actually reached out to him
Hmm.
because he was doing a webinar or something, and he was talking about that he mentored. And so I thought, I wonder if, and he even mentioned that every once in a while he'll do one pro bono. And I thought, well, I wonder if he'll take pity on me. And because at the time I didn't have very much money to offer it, if any. And so I did. I contacted him, and he was extremely gracious and very giving of his time. And he has been ever since.
So did you actually say to him, or kind of around the bush or something, oh, I don't have a lot of money, but I'd like to work with you kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yeah, and and he understood that, and Thomas has a big heart, and my experience with him is that he's always ready to help where he can. And so, like I said, our relationship now is more. I'm kind of on my own, like kind of like I don't know, a toddler or teenager, whatever. I'm kind
Hmm.
of walking on my own now. But he's always there if I have a question or anything. I can always, drop him an email, and he's always there for me.
Can you give an example of one way that Thomas's coaching has made a big impact on the direction you've taken?
You remember me telling you how I was as a child, being shy and
Hmm.
backwards? He really gave me the confidence that I needed to do this. I even was not sure that I could speak in front of people or I could write an article and actually get it published. I can remember the first time I got something published, and he called me a writer. He says, "You're a writer." And I'm like, "No, I'm not a writer." He says, "Yes, you've written something and it's been published." So, he's just given me that confidence. He's my cheerleader. He is someone that believed in me and encouraged me to keep going and keep doing it.
Another thing that I would like to talk to you about, which is a big part of who you are and who you've become, is your branding. And you've branded yourself as the archive lady. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about and how that has helped you, why you decided to do it, and how that has helped you move forward?
The archive lay came about when Thomas and I were trying to figure out my branding. He teaches about branding, and so he taught me about that. And so we were trying to figure out what kind of branding. We needed a tagline or something. And while we were trying to figure that out, I had someone email me, and they had either seen a webinar or something that I had done, and they referred to me as, "Hey, you're that archive lady." And I thought, that's it. That is it. And so that's how the archive lady was born.
And how do you think that has an impact on your both your recognition and future work by using that? Would you recommend to somebody else that that's a beneficial thing?
I see it as a beneficial thing, mainly because I can say that I'm one of these people that I have a very hard time remembering people's names. I can see people's faces, and I know them, and I may even, I do know them, but coming up with their names sometimes is difficult for me. However, I can, like the genealogy guys or the archive lady, things like that, seems those pop into my head a little better than someone's name. And when you have a brand like that, people will want to follow you. They will want to read what you write, watch your webinars, because you are someone out there that is maybe a little bit larger than the average person, I guess. I just think that branding helps you when you're trying to either sell whatever it is you're trying to sell, or if you're not selling, but you're trying to teach, you're trying to get your point across. The archive lady says this, or, it's like Dear Myrtle,
Hmm.
Pat Ritchie Erickson, that she has established Dear Myrtle, and everyone knows who Dear Myrtle is.
Hmm.
So, if you're in this profession and you're wanting to get yourself out there and get yourself known to be a household name, I think it's important that you have some sort of branding.
How big an impact does social media have right now in your career?
In my career, social media has, I guess, a very huge impact.
Oh.
I am not 100% on all social media. I came to Twitter kicking and screaming. And just this year, I really started paying attention to LinkedIn. I'm not on Instagram. I take that back. I am on Instagram, but I don't do anything much with it. So, but what it does is if you're wanting to be in this profession, you need to be on social media. You need to have a branding, and you need to interact with your community, with your tribe, if you want to call it. One thing that I like to do is I comment, I like, or I do things at least 5 to 6 people a day. Either answer a question or comment. I actually learned this from, and I don't know if you know her, Katie Lance.
Nope, don't know her.
Okay. Katie Lance is she does actually real estate, but she goes across the country speaking. She does webinars, and it's not all about real estate. It's about speaking, and it's about social media and having a branding, things like that. And so I learned from her to interact with your tribe. And so I've done that, and that has really garnered me some recognition and some, I don't know, I guess you would say the branding aspect really getting me known in the genealogy community. I would have to say social media is what catapulted me more or less to where I'm at today.
So you're doing social media with intention.
I am, and you have to. I honestly believe you have to. I'll be honest with you. I really did not want to get into social media. I'm really old fashioned, but I saw the benefits of it. I'm like everybody else. There's lots of stuff on social media that I could do without, but that's what the scroll button or the scroll thing is for. You scroll past it and go on to something else. But if you will interact with the people that are in your circle, I think that they appreciate it. It shows that you care. And I think that goes a long way in promoting not only your brand, but your profession and even your passions.
Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that I haven't covered yet?
One group or one business, I guess you'd say, that really took a chance on me very, very early on was Legacy Family Tree Webinars. And Jeff Rasmussen has just been awesome to me. The first year that I started the Archive Lady, I got to do webinars for Legacy. One thing about Legacy that I really, really love is that they support their speakers or the people that they have there. They really help them to get their name out there, to get their webinars on. And, I just think it's a fantastic educational tool. And I've always said that about Legacy. You're asking me what you haven't asked. That's something I would want to touch on because as a professional genealogist, as an archivist, they are, I think, at the top of their game about helping genealogists and educating genealogists.
So what do you see for yourself in the future in terms of like personal goals? You've already done that beginning part of your career. You have a solid profession as a full-time archivist and as a well-known genealogist. What sort of goals does Melissa Barker make for like the next 5 years?
My number one goal right now for the next 5 years is actually to write a book. Like I said, I have a gazillion ideas for books. I have an idea that I'm working on right now. And so, I hesitate to say that because then I don't want people to think, oh, well, where's your book? So I don't know how long it's going to take me to do, but that's my next goal. And other goals is to continue with what I'm doing. I enjoy and I love what I'm doing with a passion. And there's new genealogists coming along every day, and that's wonderful. And so they need teaching and they need education too. And the next thing is to continue to be my county's archivist. For as long as they'll have me, I want to be there to preserve our local history and to share that with others.
All right, Melissa, I think this would be a great time to enter into the lightning round. Are you familiar with the lightning round?
I am, and I'm kind of scared.
Don't be scared. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of quick questions, and these are typically questions that will help up-and-coming genealogists with some further thoughts. So here we go. What was the one thing you were most afraid of in starting your business?
Whether or not I could sustain it, whether or not anyone would even listen to me.
What's the best advice you've ever received from someone else?
Find what you love to do and figure out how to make an income at it.
What is one specific action listeners can take in the next 24 hours to help them transition into a genealogy career?
Watch webinars. They are fantastic educational tools that you can access right there at your home.
If you can recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be?
I actually would recommend Drew Smith's organization book. It's the one that he did about organizing your research. I highly recommend that one because it's not just about organizing those piles of paper. He helps you to organize a lot of your life aspects.
All right, last question. Give our audience one parting piece of advice and tell us how we can get in contact with you.
My parting piece of advice is something that you'll see on all of my webinars. It's kind of my tagline, and it's to always remember that not everything is online. You need to contact or visit an archive. And how you can contact me is you can find me on Facebook at The Archive Lady. You can email me at melissabarker20@hotmail.com. And I could tell you to please email me because I answer my emails, usually within 24 hours. And I love getting questions about genealogy or archives research. I'm also on Twitter at TNArchivist. So, reach out. I'm always ready to answer questions or to help you and guide you to where you might need to find that archive.
And we'll have the links to all of those in the show notes, so people can just go to the show notes and then they can connect with Melissa there instead of having to scribble it down right now as they're listening or driving or walking the dog. All right. Melissa Barker, thank you so much for being on the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Thank you, Moran.
It was great getting to know archivist and genealogist Melissa Barker. We learned how she uses the Archive Lady tagline to help brand her business. We also learned how she uses her writing, whether paid or not, to promote her brand and create new opportunities. It was quite inspirational the way she overcame her shyness to become a genealogy teacher and speaker. One thing that really struck me was how she created a niche that worked within her constraints by promoting herself as a webinar-only speaker. I liked the way she bucked convention by not following the traditional speaker path. There are a couple of news items. The first is that the podcast is now available on Spotify. So if you're a diehard Spotify listener, you can now catch the podcast right there. The easiest way to find it is to search for Miriam Pierre-Louis or search for genealogy. The other news is that I'm trying to get on a bi-weekly schedule for the podcast. Eventually, I'll settle on an exact release date twice a month. But in the meantime, you can expect a new podcast generally every 2 weeks. For your action item this week, I want you to think out of the box the same way Melissa did. In her case, she chose to do webinars only instead of in-person speaking events. Is there a path you're not following because of constraints due to a full-time job, family responsibilities, location, cost, or something else? Try to think of a way around the problem. You don't need to stick to traditional rules with your business. Make it your own and push yourself out of your comfort zone to make it happen. If you like, head to the TGP Action Group on Facebook and share your obstacles, and we'll see if we can come up with solutions. That's it for this time. Until we meet again, keep improving your business skills and take at least one step to push your business forward. The Genealogy Professional Podcast is a production of Fieldstone Common Media. Copyright 2020. Executive Producer, Miriam Pierre-Louis. Creative Producer, George Edwards. Technical Director, Jean-Luc Pierre-Louis Jr.